Hi, it's attorney Ryan McKeen, and today I'm here with attorney Jake Kocienda, and we're going to talk to you about what are some of the most common types of medical malpractice cases in 2023. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Ryan. How you doing?
Good. Jake, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been practicing law since 1997. I graduated from the University of Connecticut School of Law. My undergrad was at the College of Holy Cross up in Worcester. I've spent the majority of my career handling medical malpractice lawsuits. Of the past 20 or so years, 17 were representing the medical community as a defense attorney. Prior to that, I spent roughly 3 or 4 years actually representing the patients and against the medical community. And now I've joined the Connecticut trial firm, again representing patients that were critically and seriously harmed as a result of medical care.
So you've seen it all, Jake.
I've seen it all, both sides, and many different aspects of it.
And so what are some common kinds of medical malpractice cases that you've seen?
Sure. The most common medical malpractice case out there are failure or misdiagnoses. Failure to diagnose someone at all, or misdiagnosing them with a condition or a problem that ends up being treated, and the actual problem does not get treated, resulting in essentially bad outcomes, catastrophic or really bad outcomes that can be essentially avoided had the right treatment been diagnosed at the right time and provided.
So are you talking things like cancer?
Cancer is an easy one, and it's unfortunately a very common one where patients present with some type of a problem. For some reason, cancer's not on the differential or the list of possible causes. Days, years later, they end up getting diagnosed and they find out that the symptoms and the presentation years ago was actually the beginning of cancer. But it could be a lot of different things, congenital or other type of problems that you're born with, also conditions that develop over time, cardiac and other types of conditions that are, diabetes and aneurysms and things of that nature that essentially just get overlooked. Someone doesn't read or doesn't pay attention to some diagnostic testing, and next thing you know, you have a lack of a diagnosis that could have been picked up.
So when you have one bucket of cases, the most common being misdiagnosis, what are some other kinds of medical malpractice cases that you see?
Sure. A very common one, and it's easy to understand, are the misadventures, surgical misadventures, where an error occurs during a procedure, whether it be, an open body type procedure that is the classic one, or even smaller procedures where the doctor or nurse or someone makes a physical mistake in the technical performance. Sometimes it's failure to proceed appropriately, so proceeding with procedures that shouldn't have been proceeded with at all, or the wrong procedures done. So those would be surgical misadventures that result in some kind of a problem, very often death, but a lot of other things.
Yeah, we've over the years we've seen some clients of ours that they were operated on the wrong body part. It was supposed to be the left knee, and they ended up operating on the right knee. That's the kind of thing that you're talking about here.
Yeah, that doesn't happen as often. There's so many different things that occur now to prevent that, and yet it still does.
It does.
But no, things like doctors straying from what they call the surgical field, going into areas of the body where the wrong organ ends up being, cut, or a vein or an artery gets cut during a procedure that shouldn't have been, and the patient bleeds out, or things of that nature. So it could be within a appropriate procedure being done for appropriate reasons that just don't get done properly, as well as the wrong limb being removed or a body part, that sort of thing.
Have you one of the things that we fielded calls for over the years are sort of like, I believe they're called nicking cases, where like a nerve gets nicked and somebody has like a lot of nerve pain as a result of it.
Yeah, so whenever you're involved in surgically managing a procedure, doctors have to manipulate body parts that are not part of what is being treated, right? They're in the way when you're going through, for example, cervical spinal fusion, or an organ's being removed like a gallbladder, or abdominal surgery. You have to move certain parts aside. In the context of that, you have to separate tissues. So sometimes you get a nick, a scissor or a scalpel may nick something, but you also have what they call retractor or compression injuries of a nerve, for example, where by moving organs and tissue aside, you press on them a little bit with these retractors, but if you do that inappropriately, you can actually crush structures like a nerve. So you don't nick it, but you actually damage it, and no one knows that until after the patient wakes up days later and they don't get their feeling back or something like that.
So we've got misdiagnosis, we've got surgical misadventures. Are there other kinds of medical malpractice cases that exist?
Sure. There's just bad treatment. So, for example, people show up for one particular situation and they're treated, and the treatment's just wrong, flat out wrong. They misprescribe antibiotics, or they misdiagnose, or they diagnose the right thing but then fail to treat it appropriately, and next thing you know, that condition gets far worse than it ever should have. There's also there's mental health negligence, malpractice, where patients, unfortunately it happens all the time, depression and anxiety are one of the most common mental health illnesses, and a very, very small number may become suicidal, and the patients are discharged without actually being hospitalized when they should have been. So that's another one where they either attempt or actually commit a suicide, and it could have been avoided had they been hospitalized, or were prematurely let out when they shouldn't have been.
So if somebody's out there and they're listening to this and they think that they may have a case that sort of falls into one of these buckets, what is it that they should do?
So the first thing to do is really, think about what had happened, and figure out in their own mind whether this is something that doesn't make sense to them. But contacting an attorney who does this, who handles malpractice, is a good start. The reality of the world is we go through life having to trust professionals to do their thing, whether it be a car mechanic, an accountant, whether it be a contractor in your home. You have to trust their knowledge. We do that with medical professionals all the time. We put our health, the most important thing in our lives and our loved ones' lives, in their hands. Medical malpractice is the same thing. Contact a professional who knows these things, who understands both the law and the medical community. And that would be an attorney who specializes and handles medical malpractice and can understand the issues that these types of cases involve. Not just any personal injury attorney, but someone who has enough experience with the community.
And if somebody out there wants to contact Attorney Kocienda for no charge consultation, so you're not going to have to pay by the hour or anything like that, or pay a retainer, you can give us a call, 860-471-8333, and we're happy to help you out if you can, at least take a look and maybe give you some guidance.